Well, hello, my friends. How are we doing? David Parsons here. Welcome to News Trap. It's Wednesday, February 19th, 2025. I am going to try to hold it together as I move through some quick hits today with you. Just a reminder that we do more in-depth News Trap episodes with Justin Rogers Cooper and other guests on the Patreon page. There is a link in the episode description if you want to join, follow, subscribe, whatever you want to do with that. We appreciate it. I don't know. How are you feeling? I don't know how I'm feeling. I will say this honestly. I'm just going to be honest and raw right now. On Monday, President's Day, I hate holidays. Something about the holidays, like the days where you just have like nothing that you're supposed to be doing. I get a little lost. I had an urge to drink alcohol around noon, and I succumbed to that urge, quite frankly. And I think in part because of the just horrific vibes that are going on in this country. So solidarity with all of you out there who sometimes need to escape in whatever way you can from the hell of our reality. It's funny. I didn't really anticipate, and maybe I should have, that Elon Musk and Donald Trump would glom together as some sort of mutation, and the two of them would create something even worse than each of them separately, if that makes sense. And something about Musk's Department of Government efficiency is just driving a nail through my skull and making me honestly fear the worst. And I mean that like Children of Men, zombie apocalypse type of fears are lighting up my subconscious. I'm having terrible dreams, anxiety creeping into the picture. All of that is happening. And I'm like, I wonder how you guys are feeling. Am I overreacting here? Am I sort of like being a lib cuck? Am I being a baby? Because, honestly, they love it. The other side. The MAGA folks love the fear, and they love the feeling that they're instilling fear at all segments of society. But when I have my parents who are worried about their medical care and their social security, they depend on these social safety nets that I'll remind you they paid into. And I'm just wondering what the bigger picture here is. It seems like sowing fear and division and chaos is the end goal. And honestly, the scale of it, the depth of the sadism and cruelty and the lawlessness of it is all combining in me to make me, congratulations, guys. I'm afraid. I'm afraid for the future, and I have no idea what's going to happen. And I just want to share a couple things. I'm going to try not to be so negative, although it's hard not to be. But I did want to share a couple things that are happening that we've been talking about on our text threads, me and Justin and Andrew. Some screenshots from the media that are highlights of, or maybe lowlights. I don't know how you would put these, but maybe I just think of them as markers on the way down, right? So one of these is the story of Joni Ernst. She is a U.S. senator. And someone who's very much on the MAGA team. And I thought this was immensely disturbing, how she was treated by the Trump people when she raised some questions about Pete Hegseth being confirmed as U.S. Defense Secretary. And the question she was raising was about some credible allegations of sexual assault. So she raised those questions and was like, maybe I won't vote for him, and that brought hell upon her. So this sort of it gives you a glimpse into the MAGA mindset of how they're treating their own. Listen to this. This is from the Journal, by the way. Ernst was then subjected to waves of MAGA attacks. Facing re-election in 2026, she was threatened with a primary challenge from a local right-wing talk show host, Steve Dees, who posted, "Joni Ernst sucked as a senator long before this. I'm willing to primary her for the good of the cause. Elon Musk forked over $500,000 to blast ads that wallpapered Iowa TV, hailing Hegseth as a patriot and warrior, and warning that the deep state, i.e. Ernst, opposed him. Donald Trump Jr. unleashed a storm on social media against Ernst, saying that if any senator criticized Hegseth, maybe you're in the wrong political party. An online squadron of winged monkeys swarmed her. The phrase, "she's a Democrat," trended. Ernst succumbed to the smear campaign. She refused to meet with the alleged rape victim, according to a report by Jane Meyer in The New Yorker. She also would not see the other women with first-hand accounts. Ernst hid. The witnesses, however, told their stories to Senator Tammy Duckworth, a Democrat of Illinois and a combat veteran who lost both of her legs. From her isolation, Ernst finally released an announcement that she would support Hegseth. Duckworth said that Ernst and other Republican senators had refused to put the national security of America over their own political survival. Now, here's the personal, psychological, devastating angle to this. I was embarrassed, Ernst told the Des Moines Register, about speaking about being raped. I didn't know how to explain it. I was so humiliated, and I'm a private person when it comes to those things. After that incident, she found herself in an abusive relationship and the victim of domestic violence. As a senator, she used her position to break with her past of victimhood and established herself as a champion of those who had been victimized as she had been. But then she found herself in another abusive relationship with Donald Trump. She was threatened with being completely stripped of everything she had striven for, and her status as a senator destroyed. She had a choice to stand up against her transgressor or to subject herself to him. She decided to submit to the humiliation, and afterward, she became the enabler of the abuser. So that's just like really, really sour and devastating shit, quite honestly, to hear that, a dedicated Trump acolyte, Senator Joni Ernst, just lightly suggested maybe we should have a little problem with your defense secretary pick, and look what happened to her. I mean, they just threatened her with absolute destruction, and that sort of psychosexual angle on it, I think, is really, really important. Obviously, that's something we get into a lot on Nostalgia Trap. The Lynchian psychosexual subconscious and quite frankly, not always subconscious urges that are at the core of our political system. It's scary shit, man, and I don't know what to do with any of it, but it feels like we are in a very, very ominous moment. It feels like we're in the grip of bullies, and I don't really know what to do about that. I'm not one of these people who are like, well, actually, the Democrats and Republicans are exactly the same. They're just capitalist parties, and that's that. I mean, if you haven't noticed that there's a difference yet, I don't know what to tell you. And the Democrats did fuck this up. I mean, it is a spectacular failure for liberals, and I don't know how they come back from it. But in terms of worst case scenarios, I'm sitting here thinking like, are any of us who are working in higher education going to survive this? Like, are our jobs going to survive this? They're already signaling that they are willing to go all the way in using DEI as a kind of Trojan horse to rip apart the university. And they want us to suffer. Quite frankly, I keep saying quite frankly, I don't know why. But they want us to suffer. They really do. It feels like when you look at what is going on here, it's a different kind of politics. It's a kind of punishment politics. And that part of it is incredibly disturbing. The other element of it, though, is not just how they are using the stick of punishment, but how they are also rewarding those that are loyal to them. And I think, to me, when I decided to, like, it was time to head to the brewery and have a few IPAs on President's Day, it was because I was thinking about what's going on with Eric Adams in New York City, the mayor of New York currently, maybe for the next few days, who knows. But that the details of Adams quid pro quo deal with the Trump administration to avoid corruption charges they're just immensely disturbing, and I want to read them so that everyone listening knows a little bit more than just what you might have heard on Twitter or something. But listen to the way that this unfolded. On Monday night, Trump returned to the favor when his Justice Department ordered prosecutors in Manhattan to drop their charges against the mayor 2 months before he was set to go to trial. This get-out-of-jail card isn't free, though. It practically demands that Adams implement Trump's deportation agenda, and it leaves open the possibility that Adams could be charged again if he doesn't go along with the program. Legal observers tell me they've never seen a deal quite like it before. And while Adams may have been the most obvious and immediate beneficiary, he's not the only one. If you're a foreign government or a corrupt company trying to turn a public official into your toady, Monday's move sends a powerful signal, one of many, that America is open for business. Everything and everyone is up for sale. Just name your price and start the negotiations. Perhaps this is the moment when I should mention the Attorney General herself was, until recently, a registered foreign lobbyist for the government of Qatar, earning a rather nice salary of $115,000 a month, and that Trump's pick to lead the FBI, Kash Patel, was also working for the Qatari government, but without bothering to register, and that on Monday, Trump sacked the head of the Office of Government Ethics. Then there's the Adams situation. The indictment was supposed to be just the appetizer in a full-course meal, one of 5 federal investigations into Adams and his inner circle. The bigger federal case, many observers felt, was the one out of Brooklyn, where a Chinese billionaire had already pled guilty to giving straw donations to Adams. The one where there was strong evidence of a wider scheme of straw donations orchestrated by a top fundraiser with ties to Beijing. A memo from acting Deputy Attorney General Emil Bove effectively stops all of these probes, even though it's addressed only to the prosecutors in Manhattan. In it, Bove blocks further targeting of Mayor Adams or additional investigative steps. Adams' lawyer, Alex Spiro, in a statement, crowed that the Department of Justice has reevaluated this case and determined it should not go forward. But there's more to Bove's memo. It defers to the U.S. Attorney's Office at this time about the strength of the evidence in the case. In other words, Bove is admitting, at least provisionally, that the initial prosecution was solid. He's also holding open the possibility that the cases could get revived, maybe if Adams gets crosswise with Team Trump. There are things Trump and his team clearly want in return for holding those prosecutors at bay. In his memo, Bove ordered Adams' case to be dropped so the mayor could devote his full attention and resources to the illegal immigration and violent crime that escalated under the policies of the prior administration. Last week, City Hall issued a draft memo directing public school and migrant shelters to let ICE agents onto their properties without a warrant, if at any time you reasonably feel threatened or fear for your safety. That appeared to be at odds with current local laws, which all but forbid cooperation with ICE on the enforcement of purely civil matters like immigration status. Adams' administration released updated guidance on Monday that hew more closely to the previous legal standards. But the day's events left critics like mayoral candidate Zellner Meary wondering, what was this mayor willing to give up? Which New Yorkers was he willing to sell? Public corruption is often viewed as a victimless crime, not if the price for Adams' exoneration winds up being paid by immigrant kids. So that is an immensely disturbing passage, and one that I think was weighing heavily on me for a couple of reasons. One is from Justin's comments, which are basically saying that in his text, Justin said, this is corruption that hasn't really been seen at this level since probably the Gilded Age. And I think I agree with that. This is so far beyond Nixonian. To me, this is, a kind of corruption that is deep in the sense that it means Trump is saying and the Trump administration is saying to a mayor of New York City, do what we say, break laws in order to put kids in cages, or we'll put you in jail and you'll lose your job and you'll lose your political career. If they're willing to do that to Mayor Adams, it makes you wonder what they're willing to do to college professors or people in unions or any number of groups and individuals in America that they target for attack or that they are able to wedge into legally or illegally. This is a really intense moment. And, I don't know, again, where things will go. I don't know if judges are going to turn this all over. I read these screenshots. I check out some legacy media stuff. I don't spend a whole lot of time on social media, but I've been listening to the Ezra Klein podcast lately. I can hear people saying, Ezra Klein, isn't he just some douchebag liberal? Not really. I mean, yeah, kind of, but it gives you a really good slice into the kinds of conversations that intelligent people are having about what's going on. And in particular, I'm interested in the legal world, sort of what is happening with the kind of powerful institutions that could possibly have any counterweight to Trump's power. Because, I don't know, there's the people in the streets, and there's a little bit of wearing a resistance sticker and that sort of thing. But I'm interested in power. I'm interested in crushing these people. I'm interested in finding ways to do that. And Ezra Klein has a little bit of, I don't know if it's like misplaced. Maybe it's not. Maybe I should listen to him more. But he's very optimistic. He's very optimistic about systems and how this is just the initial thrust of Trump's leadership, and what we're going to have is a kind of blowback from legal circles and from the Supreme Court and things like that. But I don't know. I'm not necessarily as optimistic about that. And it feels like, especially when you think about Congress and the Democratic Party and Democratic politicians, they're talking about arresting AOC, right? There is a call from, what's the dude's name? Homan, who's making allegations that AOC sharing constitutional rights with people on her Instagram page is breaking the law, and that there should be an investigation. So, it just feels like we're in a really, really dark moment without a lot of counterbalance. And I spent the last weekend going to a seminar, a course on leadership and professional responsibility at the law school, which was interesting to do in this context. Interesting to me in part because some of this stuff came up, but it came up in kind of, I don't know, it came up in a way that people didn't really want to talk about it. I thought that was really interesting. There wasn't a lively discussion in the classroom when our professors brought this up. And I'll give you an example. At some point, the professors shared a couple slides about Rudy Giuliani and his how he got disbarred over fraudulent election claims in 2020. And as we were talking about that, they also shared some of the very disturbing letters written by lawyers, federal attorneys who are resigning currently because they refused to carry out some of these orders regarding Eric Adams. I think Danielle Sassoon is one of the lawyers who's in the news right now. You can look her up. Her letter is pretty incredible. But as we were talking about this, and the professor said something along the lines of, I think some of these lawyers that are basically like Rudy Giuliani breaking laws to be loyal to Trump and carrying out his orders, that they joined a cult. She said it seems like they joined a cult. And I agree with her. I was like, yeah, this is cult shit for sure. That's my language. I love it. But there was a contingent of women And, you know, they all happen to be women. Maybe there were some men, but they weren't very vocal about it. But there were a contingent of women in the back corner of the room, one of whom raised her hand. And I'm not exaggerating here. I'm not trying to be a misogynist, but she did have like a ditzy Barbie voice. And she was like, yeah, like, I just want to say that, like, some of us actually agree with Rudy Giuliani that there were, like, a lot of questions with, like, what went on with the 2020 election. And there were, like, a lot of, like, stolen votes and things. And I looked back at them like, what the fuck? Like, these people are in fucking law school. And they're, like, they're in the cult, right? And I could hear them during the break talking about, like, my husband told me that, like, they did an experiment on the vaccine and on animals, and all the animals died. And I watched a YouTube documentary about it, and I was, like, hearing these little bits of, like, just absolute idiot shit. And, like, what was amazing is the professor had to, like, sort of, like, stumble through an apology. Yes, of course, there are multiple perspectives. And we had this moment in the class where, like, people started saying, it's great that we can all share, and everybody has different perspectives. And I was like, this isn't about different perspectives, dude. Read the fucking case. If we're in law school, read the fucking case against Rudy Giuliani. It's not about how, oh, well, you know, who knows? Maybe it was a fraudulent election. Maybe Joe Biden, the Democrats, stole the election from Donald Trump. I'm not about honoring different perspectives. And they're certainly not about honoring my perspective. So that part of it, that kind of, I don't know, that's a liberal thing, honestly. That idea that, like, we all get to share and every perspective is valuable. I'm far beyond that right now, dude. Like, I want to crush these fucking people. And at some point, I had a moment in the class where later on we were talking about AI, and I used the opportunity to raise my hand and say, well, AI is not that great at reading a room. Like, AI couldn't possibly read this room and tell you that there was a MAGA contingent in the back corner among us. And, like, the crowd got all, like, uncomfortable and shit. And the professor actually said, David, I thought you were going to be nice. And it was kind of amazing that, like, just calling them out. And I looked right in their fucking eyes, and some of their faces got red. And they actually never said another thing for the rest of the time, which was a nice little win for me. But, like, the idea that we're supposed to just all be scared if someone raises their hand and says, I'm MAGA and you should respect that. And we're also, sorry, I don't want to offend you. Absolutely fucking not. Like, that's where the Democrats fucking kill me. That's where the liberal thing fucking just, to me, is rolling over for these fucking people. I mean, it's just cringe as shit. At some point, and I'll give you another example of the kind of, like, way this liberal shit runs in academia and, yes, law school, is at some point before the break, the professor says to everybody, hey, just a reminder, it's Black History Month, and we have some Black History bookmarks up here. We invite you to take one as our gift to you, take a Black History bookmark, and reflect on Black history during the break, I guess. And the kicker to this was, you don't have to if you don't want to. And to me, I was just like, what kind of fucking 90s, 2000 shit is it? This felt like a skit. Like, this felt like an episode of The Office, right? Like, that shit has become cringe. And this is not to shit on the idea of Black history at all. And this is not to shit on the idea of thinking about those things. But just the whole, like, performative, dumb fucking element of it. And, like, I'm looking at, sorry, wait 1 second. I'm looking at my Black History Month bookmark right now, which I did take because I wanted it, and I read a lot and I love bookmarks. But it has a quote on the back from Maya Angelou that just says how important it is for us to recognize and celebrate our heroes and sheroes. And I don't know about you, but I just felt nauseated by how shallow and meaningless that take on Black History Month was, and how much DEI as a kind of front for that Democratic Party industrial complex is opening up a kind of attack that we're going to regret. And that's not to say it's all Democrats or liberals' faults to see the university get dismantled or the federal government get dismantled or Social Security going away. Of course not. But it just means that, like, who is on our side, because they're doubling down on all of that shit. Like the Democratic Party is doubling down on all of this garbage and not really recognizing that we're in a new fucking moment. To me, what's happening and our, kind of worst case scenarios are leading us into a time when we're going to see bread riots, social violence in formations that we've seen before and perhaps we haven't seen before. I'll remind you that during the first Trump administration, the vibes were so bad. There were lots of instances of mass violence that, people still search for like what the reason for them was, like the Las Vegas shooting. It's like, no, to me, like what Trump and Musk are opening up is a kind of dark nihilism. And that, I think will exist. What I'm wondering actively is like, what do we do? And when I say we, I mean, I assume there are people listening to this program right now that feel the same anger and disgust with what's going on and feel absolutely powerless about it. Feel like, well, I can't just sit around and wait to vote on it. We've been out in the streets before. A Black History Month bookmark ain't gonna do it. So what is gonna do it? Because I don't know. I really don't know what the answer to that is, but it does feel like hard times are coming. And what Trump and Musk are doing, particularly in tanking the economy at the same time they're pulling out the safety nets, is going to create a kind of social chaos that I don't think we can predict the direction of it. And I don't even think Musk and Trump can predict the direction of it. And I don't think they care. They just want to see how much they can fuck it up and how much power they can take in the meantime. But we are in the Thresher. We are in the machine that has been building for a long time in American life and is now, I feel, in a moment when it has us in its grips in a darker and deeper way than ever before. And I hate to now feel like I need to go have a beer after this, but I really do. And I wonder how all of you are doing. I'm going to continue podcasting about it. That's about all I've got. But I do this podcast in part because, two reasons. And I've always said this. I want to mark the pieces of our collective history that we're living through in real time so that perhaps future generations can hear these moments and understand that there weren't people that all just like went along with it. And I just want to mark my own sort of reflections and feelings on it. I do go back to these episodes sometimes. Sometimes I marvel at like how wrong I had it or how, wow, I didn't realize I felt that way about that. But I also do this because it's important to me to find other people who feel this way. And we're not like the top podcast in the world. That throne belongs to the Joe Rogans and the right wing. They own this territory. But I don't fit in there, and I don't want to fit in there. And I know that there are a lot of people out there that are not cool with this. And there were quite a few students who came up to me at the law school and said, in one way or another, thank you for saying something about the MAGA morons in the back of the room, because I didn't want to say anything. So, there is a fear that is out there that is causing a lot of people to be silent, and I don't like the feeling that I'm alone. And so I hope that you don't feel alone if you're listening to this and you feel that same sort of, dark, ominous vibe about what's going on. Thank you for being a Nostalgia Trap listener. As I said, there are more in-depth takes on a lot of this stuff that aren't so messy as today's episode on the Patreon, but I just felt I needed to get behind the mic and say some shit right now. So sorry if I offended anybody. But again, check out the Patreon. We'll have more News Trap and Nostalgia Trap episodes coming out next week. Justin Rogers Cooper will be joining me again next week, so I'm looking forward to talking with him. He always puts things in a certain perspective for me too. So thanks so much, and I hope despite what's happening, you find something good in the world. Oh, you know what? Before we go, I did want to, speaking of something good, I did want to give, this is very random, and this might be like a kind of switch. I did want to give a couple book recommendations, because I've been reading a lot. I kind of tuned out of Netflix and HBO Max. The only thing I'm watching lately is Severance, which is amazing. I love that show. But I've been reading a lot, and there are 3 books that I wanted to recommend that have been really sort of taking me out of this stuff and making me feel alive in a different way. I read The Revenant a couple weeks ago by Michael, is it Punke? Punke. That's the one that they made a movie out of with Leo, and I think Leonardo DiCaprio won an Oscar for it. It's a really good book. It's a really great novel, and I couldn't wait to go back to it every night and live in the world that they created. It's so much more detailed than the movie, and I really, really enjoyed that. I also read, and just finished it last week, a novel called, these are novels, by the way, a novel called Veronica by Mary Gateskill. If you don't know Mary Gaiteskill's writing, she is so brutal and so beautiful in the way she phrases things. And this book was sort of about women in 1980s New York, the fashion world, the world of temps and office workers, the world of the AIDS virus. And that sounds dark, and it is. It was a dark book, but there were so many passages in it that made me just want to read them over and over. The book was like just the most savage poetry, and Gaiteskill's work is great. I want to read more of it. And then one more, I am currently reading a book by a historian called Hampton Sides. Not a novel. It's called The Wide, Wide Sea. It's about Captain Cook and his voyage to Polynesia and Hawaii and Tahiti in 1776. It is sort of a master and commander, swashbuckling imperialist story, but it's got a take on British imperialism and a take on sort of interaction between those guys and natives on these islands that is within the context of, our modern sort of moment, the pandemic moment, the we're splattering red paint on statues, Black Lives Matter moment. And I just find it really entertaining and really detailed and really smart. And I'm halfway through that right now. I think it was a big book last year. So that's called The Wide, Wide Sea. I recommend all of those books. And again, for me, books are the only thing that are sort of, besides alcohol and drugs, obviously, books are the only thing that are sort of taking me out of this current moment we're in and reminding me of the larger picture. So I like to drop into those things, and maybe you do too. All right, I've taken enough of your time. I'll be back again next week. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.